You don't seriously think you're going to get Americans to go communist, do you?
The new Red Scare is here.
Sure sucks to be.
We're back to watching some Second Thought. My goat.
Right all the time. 4 years ago, we made a video about the Red Scare coming back. And, well...
The future looks red, as in communist.
We have been fighting the spread of communism.
Communist dictators, that's what we're dealing with right now, Donald Trump.
You could go through her ideology. It's the ideology of a communist.
We will get more and more information about the network and how we can root them out and eliminate them from the existence of American society.
This is the first time in American history that there is an all-of-government effort to dismantle left-wing terrorism, to dismantle Antifa.
Just look at the result of yesterday's election in New York, where their party installed a communist as the mayor.
We're in the first stages of a new Red Scare, and things are getting hotter for sure. Frog in a hot tub kind of vibes. Not exactly stewing yet, but the heat is definitely there, and the jets are hitting just right.
Have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
No peoples in the world can feel secure against this aggression.
It is a matter of national survival.
The communist seizure of power.
But first, it's ad read time, because God knows we're not making any money from YouTube AdSense. Thank you, Google. Skip ahead to this timestamp if you hate me and don't want to support my work. This episode is sponsored by Aura, the only cool company on this cursed platform. Google your name real quick. Odds are some of your personal information comes up, right? If I search my name, it's just my public social media profiles. That's because Aura is my digital watchdog. If they get even a whiff of my data being sold, traded, or exposed in a breach anywhere on the internet, including the dark web, they track down the source and make sure they have a bad time. There are companies out there called data brokers whose whole purpose is to find and sell your data. They do it without your consent, and
I'm not skipping because I'm doing ethical reacts, bro. Chill.
Billions selling it to marketers, scammers, and even stalkers. They are the worst. Thanks to Aura, they're not my problem anymore. Aura forces them to remove my data, and they keep it removed. But that's just part of why I use and genuinely appreciate Aura. It's an all-in-one security tool. They provide real-time fraud alerts for credit and banking, 24/7 identity theft monitoring, a secure VPN, antivirus, parental controls, password manager, credit checker, and a lot more. And if somehow anything does happen, Aura includes $5 million in identity theft insurance. And they have US-based fraud experts on call 24/7. If you're anything like me, I'm sure you're sick and tired of these stupid, evil little companies stealing your personal information and using it to make a quick buck. That's why I use Aura. It keeps me and my family safe online. If you're ready to protect your data, you can get 2 weeks absolutely free when you use my link. During those 2 weeks, you'll see exactly where your data is being leaked and who's doing it. Give it a try. I promise you'll appreciate the peace of mind. And now, back to the show.
You must not confuse dissent with disloyalty.
Y'all are so fucking used to... God damn it. Y'all are so used to seeing no ads on the Piker Broadcasting Service is crazy. You like freak out when you see one ad.
Okay, so Red Scares. I won't lie to you, these things are usually pretty easy to spot. Red Scares are periods, historically speaking, during which civil liberties are attacked in the name of defending America from domestic movements for justice and equality.
How does communism exist if it is so intolerable to the people it rules?
It is a way of life, an evil and malignant way of life.
They take over organization after organization in America in just 2 steps: infiltration and agitation.
I don't think you have any conception of the danger of the Communist Party.
To some extent, there's always some of that going on. But in moments where you have an unpopular war, economic problems at home, and visible racialized violence coming together, like we do today, that's when the communist label starts being thrown around and becomes much more toxic.
Communist?
Communist.
He's a straight up communist.
And the effects of that can be devastating. Just a few months ago,
I think it's really funny because what this is going to inevitably do is destigmatize the term itself. I mean, Bernie Sanders coming out and being like, I'm a democratic socialist, like, did a lot to destigmatize the term socialist. Great. Keep saying Zohran Mamdani, the most fucking popular politician in the country through approval ratings, by approval ratings, is a communist. Okay, great.
So we saw one of the clearest signals that things are escalating when Trump signed the National Security Presidential Memorandum Number 7, also known as
Anti-communism is a clear-cut, telltale sign that you're dealing with a fucking fascist, by the way.
NSPM 7.
Either a fascist or a indirect fascist collaborator.
This is not a normal executive order. It's not an executive order at all. I know it's become way too easy to tune those out with the over 200 Trump has already signed, but NSPMs
What's different now compared to the original Red Scare that makes you think that it won't be stigmatized? Close proximity to American prosperity. What? We are so many decades out from the American industrial boom in the aftermath of World War II. It's not even close. There's also nothing you can really point to, like the USSR, to fearmonger motherfuckers on. Like, especially in the age of the internet, it's very difficult to combat narratives around a country that is run by a communist party like China, because people can kind of see for themselves. China is destroying America in the international capitalist marketplace. And as material conditions worsen here, as contradictions increase, and you look at like the trajectory of a country like China versus the downward trajectory of a country like the United States of America, it's very difficult for people to look at that and think, no, we're doing great, actually. We should just kill more Cuban people or Venezuelan people, and then we'll be fine. There's only so much brainwashing that you can engage in until people recognize, well, things are not great.
Are actually an entirely different kind of document. Unlike executive orders, which cover general federal day-to-day operations, NSPMs are specifically for the defense, foreign policy, intelligence, and law enforcement apparatus. So, cops. And in this NSPM, the 7th ever, all those sectors are tasked with a new project. Quote, disrupting groups, organizations, and even individuals who display any of the following things that the NSPM calls indicators of violence: anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, extremism on gender, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, to name just a few.
These are anarchists and agitators, professional anarchists and agitators, and they get hired by wealthy people.
Would you actually consider China communist and not just hyper-capitalist? No, China's not communist. China's run by a communist country. China is a transitional socialist state. And yes, I would consider the Chinese project to be a socialist one. It's not, there is no one perfect, what did I say? China is run by a communist party. And there are still issues. There are still issues in China. There's still growing pains in China. But it is objectively a transitional socialist state, not just because they say that they are, but because they have control over flows of capital. Now, will they ever actually achieve communism one day in the future by 2050 or whatever the fuck people say? I don't know.
As Red Scares go, this one is really on the nose. This NSPM makes holding any of these views, which it doesn't bother to carefully define, a sort of pre-crime that just about anyone to the left of the MAGA crowd could reasonably be accused of. And it gives the DOJ the authority to investigate people who hold these views without...
It is pretty funny that he says professional anarchists. If you know anything about anarchists, you know they are not professional anything, okay? A profession sounds too close to a job to me, okay? And I know those motherfuckers are not doing it, okay?
Any of this having to be approved by Congress, which is useful because some in Congress have already caught on to what's going on here.
It certainly appears like it's a strategy to take folks you disagree with and label them a terrorist threat when there may be absolutely no such threat at all.
The NSPM-7 is a concerning development, but in all honesty, we've already seen what this sort of crackdown looks like before it was even signed. Remember the anti-ICE protests in LA last summer?
Our continuing coverage of the fast-moving developments in
Why do you say you work with anarchists and they say shit like that? Because it's funny.
Los Angeles.
I was there.
Today, protesters were back out on the streets for the third consecutive day. President Trump deployed some 2,000
with my professional anarchists.
National Guard members in response to violence and chaos in the city.
In June, the SSCC put 3 organizations, quote, on notice for what it calls supporting coordinated protests and riots, lawless mob actions, and aiding and abetting criminal conduct. Now, that kind of warning is concerning enough on its own. But in this same letter, these 3 groups were also told they now have to keep all communications and contractual, financial, travel, and strategy information related to their role in, quote, planning, coordinating, or funding the protests, or face possible criminal investigation. And while on paper, this means that if there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to fear, the reality is that this is a pretty common intimidation tactic that's been used in the last 2 Red Scares of the 20s and 50s to shut down progressive orgs. Without needing to take anyone to trial, warnings like these create fear, and that fear drives down membership. Abiding by these demands and surrendering all this data also takes work, and therefore resources, away from organizing and recruiting, which also hurts membership. This kind of scrutiny also opens the door to facing all sorts of penalties for non-compliance, which are bad enough already, but they can also implicate people outside the immediate organization who become guilty by association. Effectively, this is a low-effort way for the state to hurt progressive organizations and their communities without anybody needing to be formally tried for any crime. The accusation is destructive enough. To give you an idea, this very kind of thing shut down groups like the CAA back in the 50s, when 18 years of pressure just became too much. And let's actually stay on the 50s for a second, because there's a lot to learn about how Red Scares work back then.
Chairman J. Parnell Thomas of New Jersey opens an inquiry into possible communist penetration of the Hollywood film industry.
I don't believe it's a political party. I believe it's an un-American thing. And I feel that they really ought to be smoked out.
When you hear about the second Red Scare, if that's something that happens to you, it's usually through the prism of what happened in Hollywood.
These are the Hollywood 10. In the fall of 1947, they were subpoenaed to appear before the House Committee on Un-American Activities. They were tried and declared guilty. They appealed their cases to the higher courts, and their appeal was denied. All 10 are now in federal prison, serving 1-year sentences.
The big thing people know about the 50s Red Scare is blacklists. Naming names. Lists of over 900 people suspected of being communists and thereby ostracized from having any place in Hollywood.
The 6 or 7 major studios early in December of 1947 made this announcement that 10 persons who had refused to divulge before the committee their political affiliation would no longer be employed in the Hollywood motion picture industry.
Writers had to go underground. Oscar-winning actors weren't hired for decades. Studios abandoned their directors. During the height of McCarthy...
Yeah, how about that fucking repression? How about that state-backed repression, by the way? And for the record, America was not under the same level of threat that a country like Cuba is, okay? And they still did that shit.
McCarthyism, suspicion of communist ties, was enough to ruin lives and careers.
I think it was probably a very necessary thing at the time, because the radical liberals were going to take over our business.
And had it only been that, the Red Scare would have already been a massive attack on freedom and free speech. But the second Red Scare was much more than blacklists. Quote, by official counting, 2 people were executed by the state, several hundred academics were fired, several thousand went to prison or were deported, and several tens of thousands lost their jobs as state or federal workers. The FBI spied on Americans in the civil rights movement. The Supreme Court upheld the convictions of those who refused to name names. Cities like Chicago barred suspected communists from public housing. And New York even denied fishing licenses to those who wouldn't swear an anti-communist loyalty oath. Wouldn't even give them the benefit of the trout. Now, on the organization side of things, groups like CPUSA, CAA, and the CRC were banned and or lost tens of thousands of members. We're talking about a huge chill across all of civil society. And not just in socialist groups that were officially targeted, as you might expect, but almost everywhere on the left. And I'll let you in on a secret. That was the point. While on their face, Red Scares designate communism as the enemy, communism is a flexible enough word to include anything vaguely progressive the government wants to target.
They are lying, dirty, shrewd, godless, murderous, determined, and it is not an American political party like any other.
During the 50s, that meant things like targeting black activists pushing for equal human rights, especially aggressively, and seriously undermining progressive programs like the New Deal. Now, the New Deal was not a communist project, just to be clear. But under McCarthyism, fear of Reds became the justification for a total assault on workers' rights that the New Deal had improved. For example, one way the New Deal was sabotaged was with the Taft-Hartley Act. Taft-Hartley curbed the right to strike and boycott and made unions much, much weaker as a result. And Taft-Hartley was far from the only strategy used to achieve that. A big part of the Red Scare was also the thousands of state and federal workers being purged from the government. Black, Jewish, and queer workers were disproportionately targeted and accused of innate communist sympathies and fired en masse, thereby gutting the government of its more social and regulatory powers in the process. And to that end, this scare looks a lot like the last one.
We are now in day 31 of the government shutdown, and many SNAP recipients will not receive benefits.
So you can't be against communism without being a fascist. So being anti-communist is being fascist. More often than not, yes. That's why I said you're either a collaborator with fascists inadvertently without recognizing that you are a collaborator with fascists, or you are just a straightforward fascist. That's why liberals, the ones that weren't anti-communist, FDR, were a very important and formative ally in World War II. In the battle against fascism. And what came after that was a sequence of anti-communist liberals that participated in the Cold War and directly aligned and sometimes reinstated fascists into power. Yeah. They're going to clip that? I mean, historically speaking, this is just the truth. What the fuck? You can clip it. And once again, people can get mad and say, you know, you're wrong or whatever. But historically, when liberals have aligned with fascists, they were not anti-communist. Or, sorry, when liberals have aligned with communists, they've defeated fascists. It's true. FDR, not an anti-communist. It is objectively what happened. I hope we can get back to that, considering the real dangers that fascism presents once again. I am one of your 380,000 viewers, and I agree. Thank you.
Benefits tomorrow on the 1st of the month.
As of writing this, 40 million people just went without SNAP benefits for weeks as Trump blamed the shutdown on Democrats and labeled them part of the, quote, radical left. Last year, Doge tore through hundreds of thousands of federal jobs led by a billionaire whose life mission is being anti-woke. And you probably missed this, but last January, the chair of the NLRB, the part of the government in charge of enforcing labor law and protecting workers from unfair labor practices, was fired, meaning the NLRB is now, quote, toothless, according to another fired NLRB official. And we're well on the way to the National Labor Relations Act being repealed entirely. This could potentially mean no more federal right to collective bargaining or worker organizing at all. And if there's some stir around the words communist and Antifa today, woke seems to be the preferred wedge for forcing these tactics through these last few years. Communism is bad, always, but woke is scary now. So now everything is woke, from universal healthcare to drag, and under this label, anything and everything becomes a very real threat to Americanism. See, real Americans don't watch drag shows, or afford life-saving procedures, or protest. That's lib woke commie shit. Real Americans shut up and take it. And take it, some people are. Just like in previous Red Scares, we're seeing private institutions willingly running away from woke like their predecessors ran away from red. If the last Red Scare relied on Hollywood to self-police, today law firms, universities, major brands, and hospitals have all already shown themselves to be ready to bend the knee. They've rejected any association with wokeness, and in the process have happily helped this Red Scare along without even being forced. And the effects of that can be dramatic. For past Red Scares, all the infiltration, intimidation, and general destruction of civil society poisoned the well on progressive politics for years. At the end of World War II, the progressive movement was rich and interconnected. Membership in groups like CPUSA peaked. Anti-fascism was anti-capitalism, was anti-racism, was anti-imperialism, was anti-war. There was a clear and popular sense that to fight for one cause was to fight for them all. In the same way that today's No Kings protest opposed gross
Mao Zedong grandma, call me if you want to get this revolution started.
abuses of government power and horrifying kidnappings by immigration officials and wealth accumulation by billionaires, even if they do so vaguely, so too did the pre-Red Scare progressive movement unite all those who couldn't accept injustice in all its forms. But the Red Scare wiped out that solidarity. Being associated with anyone on the left was just too risky. So the fight for democratic socialism and human rights was quickly watered down into a more palatable protest for holding on to liberalism as the government was gutted and incremental.
FDR recognizing Social Security would keep a Bolshevik revolt from happening doesn't make him a red. I never said FDR was a socialist. Hello. I literally said FDR was a liberal. I simply said he was not anti-communist. Hello. I don't, look, I know I get wordy sometimes, okay? What the fuck is going on here? Why is it that every fucking stream is just filled to the goddamn brim with waffles, pancakes situations over and over again?
Liberal.
Why? Dude, this is the core of a lot of problems. Leftist purity culture. It's not even leftist purity culture. It's just, this is just people on the internet being fucking stupid. Okay? I chose my words very fucking carefully. Shut the fuck up.
Extending civil rights to more groups. It took years, until the late 60s, for the spirit of intersectional struggle to come back. Even though he's now associated almost exclusively with the fight for civil rights, MLK is a good example of this. He said things like, quote, "We must see now that the evils of racism, economic exploitation, and militarism are all tied together. You can't really get rid of one without getting rid of the others." He believed that capitalism had, quote, outlived its usefulness, and most famously of all said, quote, "Call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, but there must be a better distribution of wealth within this country for all God's children." But between the 50s and the 60s, too much organizational power was lost, and these beliefs and their associated demands just became too ambitious. Within months of launching the Poor People's Campaign, a new movement that brought all these struggles together again, King was assassinated, and the rest of the Cold War years successfully buried his mission.
The problem of racism, the problem of economic exploitation, and the problem of war are all tied together. These are the triple evils that are in.
I mean, straight up, there it is. Jesse Jackson, rest in power. If you look around and wonder why there are so many like black liberals who are overtly anti anti-communist, anti-socialist, anti-left. A big part of the reason why is because the American education system totally whitewashed MLK's vision and has a very antagonistic relationship with like anyone past the point of MLK, like Malcolm X and numerous other black revolutionaries throughout the civil rights struggle. And also on top of that, aside from the Red Scare, they just straight up killed many of these people, many of the leadership. And that's part of the reason why most people post like, 80s and 90s have not gotten this radical education at all.
Interrelated. What I'm saying today is that we must go.
I mean, you can even see a piece of that right now with the recollections of Jesse Jackson's legacy, right? Jesse Jackson was a far more radical person in his everyday existence, and the way that like Chuck Schumer is reminiscent of his legacy, the way that all of these people that work to undermine his movement every step of the fucking way talk about Jesse Jackson, gives you a little taste in real time of that revisionist history when he was around in the 80s and 90s. Like, he was very much in operation, right? It's crazy. It's pure revisionism. Yeah, I mean, this is a one of the examples.
Go from this convention and say, America, you must be born again.
What I'm trying to say here is that Red Scares aren't just mass moral panics like you might typically think. They are concerted efforts to force progressives back to the center with fear. The message coming from the very top is moderate, accept that you have no power, and you might be spared. The good thing is that we're seeing people rejecting this deal everywhere. The biggest city in the country just elected a socialist. Running to the center lost the Democrats the presidential election. Membership in left-wing orgs is reaching new highs. Protests have never had as many attendees. Everywhere you look, yes, you see intimidation and recycled tactics, but you also see courage and community and resistance. People are still organizing, still fighting for justice, still...
Oh yeah, this is the best Jesse Jackson speech of all time. It's so fucking good.
Demanding equality and getting results. Think of it this way. They wouldn't bother scaring people that they're not scared of themselves.
It's good. Great video. Here, I'll play you this.
We have the right to vote. We have open housing. What's the fundamental challenge of our day? It is to end economic violence. Plant closing without notice.
Dog. I'm waiting. You understand? The reason why Austin is doing the Gaydar stream after my stream is so that I can raid into it. So I'm currently waiting for Austin's stream to be ready so I can raid into it before I leave to go there. Okay? I was supposed to end the broadcast 15 minutes ago.
Economic violence. Even the greedy do not profit long from greed. Economic violence. Most poor people are not lazy. They're not black. They're not brown.
For people that don't know, I'm doing the Gaydar stream with Austin, where Austin, myself, and Will are going to compete against one another to figure out who's actually gay. They chose like a bunch of people, some gay, some straight. And if I win, Austin has to get a PBS tattoo, Piker Broadcasting Service tattoo on his ass. If he wins, we have to do a Fear and show in Portland, Oregon. Okay. I heard Austin's middle name is Late. Austin Late Show is true.
They're mostly white and female and young. But whether white, black, or brown, a hungry baby barely turned inside out is the same color.
Yes,
Call it
a permanent
pain.
tattoo. I gotta pee.
Call it hurt. Call it agony. Most poor people are not on welfare. Some of them are illiterate and can't read the want ad sections. And when they can't find a job that matches their address. They work hard every day. I know. I live amongst them. I'm one of them. I know they work. I'm a witness. They catch the early bus. They work every day. They raise other people's children. They work every day. They clean the streets. They work every day. They drive dangerous cabs. They work every day. They change the beds you slept in these hotels last night and can't get a union contract. They work every day. No, they are not lazy. Someone must defend them because it's right, and they cannot speak for themselves. They work in hospitals. I know they do. They wipe the bodies of those who are sick with fever and pain. They empty their bedpans. They clean out their commode. No job is beneath them. And yet when they get sick, they cannot lie in the bed they made up every day. America, that is not right. We are a better nation than that. We are a better nation than that. We need a real war on drugs. You can't just say no. It's deeper than that. You can't just get a palm reader or an astrologer. It's more profound than that. We're spending $150 billion on drugs a year. We've gone from ignoring it to focusing on the children. Children cannot buy $150 billion worth of drugs a year. A few high-profile athletes are not laundering $150 billion a year. Bankers are.
Amazing how literally nothing has changed? Yes, because capitalism is still very much intact. That is precisely the reason why you can look back at my commentary from 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and you will hear the exact same things. That is precisely the reason why you look back at Jesse Jackson's speech from 1988 and you hear the exact same criticisms because the issues have not changed. Because if you analyze the system from an anti-capitalist, materialist lens, the issues persist.
Children in Watts who unfortunately in their despair, they're great.
That's why it was so shocking for people when they were like, wait a minute, Bernie was saying the same shit fucking 50 years ago? What the hell? That makes no sense. Yeah, it only doesn't make sense if you're unfamiliar with the immortal science of Marxist-Leninism. Okay, well, not to say Bernie is a Marxist-Leninist. I wish. But, you know. But that's it.
Of hope have become raisins of despair, and they're turning on each other, and they're self-destructing. But I stayed with them all night long. I wanted to hear their case.
I'm gay and Lebanese.
Austin's speech would Austin's speech would look like this.
I hate white people. I hate white people.
They said, Jesse Jackson, as you challenge us to say no to drugs, you're right. and to not sell them, you're right. To not use these guns, you're right. By the way, the promise of SEPTA, they displaced CETA. They did not replace CETA. We have neither jobs, nor houses, nor services, nor training, nor way out. Some of us take drugs as anesthesia for our pain. Some take drugs as a way of pleasure, good short-term pleasure and long-term pain. Some sell drugs to make money. It's wrong, we know, but you need to know that we know. We can go and buy the drugs by the boxes at the port. If we can buy the drugs at the port, don't you believe the federal government can stop it if they want to? They say we don't have Saturday night specials anymore. They say we buy AK-47s and Uzas, the latest NATO weapons. We buy them across the counter on Long Beach Boulevard. You cannot fight a war on drugs unless and until you're going to challenge the bankers and the gun sellers and those who grow them. Don't just focus on the children. Let's stop drugs at the level of supply and demand. We must end the scourge on the American culture. Leadership. What difference will we make? Leadership cannot just go along to get along. We must do more than change presidents. We must change direction. Leadership must face the moral challenge of our day. The nuclear war build-up is irrational. Strong leadership.
By the way, today's the day of Malcolm X's assassination. In 1965, on this day, Malcolm X was assassinated. Speaking of black radicals.
Not the desire to look tough and let that stand in the way of the pursuit of peace. Leadership must reverse the arms race. At least we should pledge no fresh use. Why? Because fresh use begets fresh retaliation, and that's mutual annihilation. That's not a rational way out. No use at all. Let's think it out and not fight it out because it's an unwinnable fight. Why hold a card that you can never drop? Let's give peace a chance. Leadership. We now have this marvelous opportunity to have a breakthrough with the Soviets. Last year, 200,000 Americans visited the Soviet Union. There's a chance for joint ventures in the space, not Star Wars and the war arms escalation, but a space defense initiative. Let's build in the space together and demilitarize the heavens. There's a way out. America, let us expand. When Mr. Reagan and Mr. Gorbachev met, it was a big meeting. They represented together 1/8 of the human race. 7/8 of the human race was locked out of that room. Most people in the world tonight, half are Asian, 1/2 of them are Chinese. There are 22 nations in the Middle East. There's Europe, 400 million Latin Americans next door to us, the Caribbean, Africa, 500 million people. Most people in the world today are yellow, or brown, or black, non-Christian, poor, female, young, and don't speak English. In the real world, this generation must offer leadership to the real world.
Don't tell them, Jesse. They're going to get scared. Don't remind them, Jesse. They get real scared when you bring that up. Jesse, don't do it. Oh, no.
We're losing ground in Latin America, Middle East, South Africa because we're not focusing on the real world. That real world. We must use basic principles. Support international law. We stand the most to gain from it. Support human rights. We believe in that. Support self-determination. We're built on that. Support economic development. You know it's right. Be consistent and gain our moral authority in the world. I challenge you tonight, my friends. Let's be bigger and better as a nation and as a party.
God, I wish they could have identity politics Jesse Jackson. It don't work in that direction though, does it? Against the caucus. You know what I'm saying? Obviously different time, but regardless, it just seems to only work in one direction. You know, if you're socialist and you're black or you're brown, because like, I was thinking about this the other day. Everyone's always like, Hasan. Like someone was complaining. They were like, Hasan doesn't like Kamala Harris, but is over here talking about John Ossoff when I like barely mentioned his name, right? And it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that these people imply that, like, oh, I must be racist if I don't like Jasmine Crockett, or if I'm critical of Jasmine Crockett, or I must be racist if, you know, I had a lot of justifiable criticisms about Kamala Harris. And then all the people that I am closest to in my politics, there's not a single fucking white person amongst them. It doesn't matter necessarily to me at all. If there's a white guy and they're based, then they're fucking based. Who gives a shit? Right? And I still, it's so remarkable that when you look at the demographic makeup of the squad and some of the most progressive, some of the most leftist, left adjacent politicians in this country right now, there is not a single white man in the bunch. I guess maybe Bernard Sanders, and he's on a separate category all on his own. But like, there is not a single, like, there. I was just thinking about that. Summer Lee, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar. Where are the fucking white bros? Zohran Mamdani. No, I'm not doing the Bernie's Jewish, so he's not white shit. Okay, Bernie's a white man. Come on, Jesus Christ. I guess Plattner is the only guy, you know, he's maybe a little too white. Cory Bush, Jamal Bowman. Where are the white men? That's what I don't understand. These guys act as though every single manifestation of the left is a white male dominated politics. And for the record, and I can't stress this enough, I don't give a shit if you got a socialist who is a white man, okay? I care about ideas. I care about policies that improve people's lives. I don't give a shit about their demographic background. It just happens to be that when people come from that sort of background, from a point of marginalization, their lived experience happens to align social values, right? But because that's what I care about. I care about demographic representation as long as your background has informed your worldview, as long as your experience of marginalization has informed your worldview, has made you into a woke person, for example. And yet liberals always deploy this weapon, and they don't even fucking do it against the right, dude. That's another thing that I realized, like, in the last 5 years or so, like, ever since 2016 happened, I've begun to realize that liberals don't even use the fucking "you're racist" line against the right, because the right's like, yeah, I'm racist. Fuck yeah, I'm racist. What are you gonna do about it? And they just only use it against the left, knowing full well that we are the people who do care about racism and will think twice. They don't give a shit. And better yet, to add insult to injury, you have right-wingers doing it too. Nikki Haley, right? You got right-wingers who have always deployed tokens over and over again on the Republican Party side to be like, no, hold up now. You can't. Clearly, we're not racist. I mean, I'm a black man. I know Donald Trump is not racist. That's what Tim Scott says all the time. I saw a video about Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent was being interviewed by Will Cain, and Will Cain was like, "You're the first gay guy that's been appointed to this position. How does that make you feel?" And Scott Bessent was like, "Yeah, because Donald Trump is fucking woke. They call him racist. They call him homophobic. But who cares? Look, see." Yeah, I didn't even know Scott Bessent was gay. Anyway, isn't that interesting? Donald Trump has plenty of women in his cabinet. Donald Trump has plenty of women in his appointments. Donald Trump has plenty of women in close proximity to him. His chief of staff is a woman, right? Very powerful lady. This should show people that hollowed out identity politics is a tool of the right. Standpoint epistemology deployed to defend American policy of maximum violence, whether it be sanctions with the sole purpose of regime change, a trade embargo, stealing oil from other countries that simply want to help Cuba, utilizing standpoint epistemology to say, as a Cuban woman and a daughter of immigrants, I think the real reason why Cuba is suffering is because of the Cuban government's communism. That doesn't work. That's never worked. It only works on people who are at least a little bit woke and are kind of stupid. Stupid enough to go, wait a minute. Yeah, that's right. She is a Latina Cuban lady. Maybe she's right. Why am I listening to this fucking white socialist man living in the lap of luxury in Los Angeles? Don't listen to me. Listen to the Cuban authors. Listen to Latin American historians. After all, those are the people that inform my perspective. I do listen to Cuban people. Fidel Castro. I was about to say Che Guevara, who's not Cuban, but, honorary Cuban.